Hello everyone. Assalamualaikum. Tachehau. Yapdiyarkinge Vanikam. My name is Said Sadiq. I'm from Malaysia. Issues of climate change, the sustainability agenda are issues which are intergenerational in nature. The debt of climate change cannot be wiped off when one generation ends. In reality, is carried from one generation to another. And with that in mind, we owe a moral duty to care about this issue more than anything else, because the failure to act today will reap horrible consequences for our children and grandchildren. Our lives are inherently interconnected to one another. Actions taken in one region of the world will affect the other, and climate change will be that interconnected agenda. With that in mind, since this is such a pressing issue, I don't have to talk about the stats and the data, because I'm very sure many others will talk about it. And since this particularly affects one generation to another, which means that young people will be impacted the most by decisions made today, that means that young people should have a bigger role at the decision-making table in deciding what policies should be shaped, which will drive the climate change agenda, which will drive sustainability agendas from a country to a region to a global phenomenon. And being a young policymaker, I think it's uncontroversial for me to say that young people, not just in Malaysia and Southeast Asia, but across the world, care a lot more about climate change and sustainability than those who are much older than us. Because we know that the decisions which are made by politicians of today, policymakers of today, corporates of today, will impact us the most, because we are the ones who will more likely inherit the leadership and of our respective countries. And with that in mind, it is crucial for us to drive an agenda which includes a lot more young people, young policymakers at the decision-making table, so that they can shape policies which will define our generation's interests 10, 20, 30 years from now. In Malaysia, when I served as the youngest minister 2 years ago, one of the first things which I did is to pursue 3 critical constitutional amendments. One is on the reduction of the voting age from 21 years old to 18 years old. Second is to reduce the age of candidacy from 21 to 18 years old. And third is to pursue for automatic voter registration, which will enfranchise millions of young voters in Malaysia. Through these 3 landmark constitutional amendments, which were passed through bipartisanship in the Malaysian parliament and pushed by me, it was able to create a political earthquake in Malaysia, where we were able to enfranchise more than 7.8 million young voters, which effectively means that young people in Malaysia will become the kingmakers of any election, whether today or of the future. I believe this is important because as we empower young people and the generation of tomorrow and of today, this is the best way for us to ensure that climate change issues will feature prominently in the eyes and hearts of Malaysian politics, of corporate players, because they will now know that when young people are very much interested about climate change issues, they want to see politicians talk about the Green New Deal. They want to see who can protect their future a lot more. They want to see who will be more climate friendly, who will be able to pursue for more renewable energy plans. And that's where we see not just is it a Malaysian phenomenon. In the United States, you have people like AOC, who has come up with a new Green Deal to push the boundaries and interest and consciousness over the environment. We have seen in Malaysia the same thing happening, where it is young Malaysians who are leading the battle for industry players, politicians, political parties to care a lot more about green issues and push for policies positively, a positive competition among political parties and political personalities to pursue this. And that's why I believe it is important for this push to be bottom up. When we empower young people through democratic means, it effectively means that issues which were previously sidelined, issues like the environment, job creation for the young, educational qualities, will now become issues of priority. It will no longer just be seen as a youth issue, but it will be seen as a national issue. And that's why I'm a big advocate to not just create seats for young people at the decision-making table, but more importantly, to empower institutions which will open up many more doors based on merits for young people to be able to sit at the decision-making table and therefore argue for their future and ensure that the debt of climate change can be tackled today and not when it is already too late. Because I do acknowledge, and when I first joined politics as well, I co-founded a political party when I was 23 years old, and that political party now has already come up with 2 prime ministers in Malaysia. And being young, I know that there's this unfortunate mislabeling that young people are too apathetic, they do not care, they only focus on their games, they simply do not care about issues around them. And there's often this mislabeling that young people are too young, they do not have any experience, and therefore they should not be given a say at the decision-making table. But I believe that the best way to break these mislabelings is to prove them with our success, to prove them with our passion and idealism, because what we lacked in experience, we make up for our passion. What we lacked in our experience, we make up with our disruptive mindset, that we are the generation of disruptors, and that we dare to think out of the box, we dare to think critically to break the conventional walls which may have hinder our ability as a society or a country to move forward. And that's where you see people like Greta Thunberg, who's able to capture the imagination, not just of Europeans, but of global society overall, that climate change issue is a real issue. And she's able to do that with many interesting ways of activism. We also see in the corporate sector, right? People like Elon Musk, who's able to spearhead Tesla forward at a time where many people thought he was crazy to do so, but he's able to do so out of his creative thinking, critical thinking, and being able to champion an agenda which no one else dared to do. And that's the beauty of having young people at the decision-making table. What they lack in experience, they make up for disruptive thinking, creative ideas like never before, therefore being able to turbocharge a country and a whole agenda forward. So that's where I believe, not just in Malaysia, but this model should be replicated elsewhere, where not only do we create a simple quota system by having young people at the decision-making table because they will be most vocal on their future, on issues of sustainability, the climate agenda, but it's not merely about having tokenistic representation at the elite level. However, it's about opening up democratic avenues on a grassroots level so that once this young leader leaves or departs from the norms of defending the truth and of climate change, let's say a young politician betrays that agenda, but once you create that democratic avenue, you open up that democratic space, it's a grassroots agenda, that's where a lot more will climb up and becomes a very progressive competition to the top and not a negative competition to the bottom, where it's merely about power, money, wealth, and status and positions. So I'm a big advocate of opening up democratic avenues, of empowering democratic institutions so that it becomes a lot more susceptible to young people, because young people inevitably will be at the decision-making table out of their own merit, not just because they are young, but out of their own merit. And when they are there, they will be able to champion for climate change agenda, sustainable policies, things which will not just last for one generation, but will last for generations to come. And that's where in Malaysia, in my very short stint as a minister, I'm able to amend 3 critical constitutional amendments, which I believe will empower generations of Malaysians in the future, especially young ones, and therefore making young people kingmakers of Malaysian politics, effectively putting youth issues now as national issues. As I started at the beginning, issues of climate change is an intergenerational issue. You cannot wipe out the debt of climate change once one generation ends. And since our lives are interconnected to one another like never before, we owe a duty to champion this issue together. There's a phrase in Malaysia, I think it's in Mandarin, which I really like. 我们妥协一家人. In the end, we are all one big family. And that's the reality of things in how we deal with climate change. That this duty is not just our duty or my duty or your duty. It is the duty of all citizens, global citizens, together forever. And the best way to secure the future is to empower the future, which is the youth of today. Thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully, once COVID subsides and we win this war together, we'll be able to meet face to face. And if you do have a chance, please do visit beautiful Malaysia. Thank you very much.